Welcome to the Black Entrepreneur Experience podcast, inside the business, buzz, and brilliance of Black entrepreneurs. Here is your host, Dr. Frances Richards.
What happens in Vegas goes all over the world on Black Entrepreneur Experience, episode number 188. Thank you for joining us as we elevate the Black Entrepreneur Experience by elevating CEOs, thought leaders, innovative thinkers, and Black entrepreneurs across the globe. I'm your host, Dr. Frances Richards. Our next guest created a safe space for women of color entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs, innovators, thought leaders, and creatives to network, strategize, and build. Since the inception, the Parker sisters have hosted brunches, summits, workshops, and pitch competitions while being advocates for women of color throughout the community. Welcome, sisters in business, Alicia, Tiffany, Talisha, and Nicole.
Hey there. Hello. Morning.
You know what? I have given our audience such a brief bio. Why don't you ladies fill in the blanks and share with us what you'd like us to know about you and your businesses?
Great. So I guess we can go in order. I'm Elisa. I'm the oldest of the Parker girls. We actually have two other siblings who are older brothers, but I like to tell people I'm the oldest of everybody. Although I'm not the actual oldest in number. And Nicole and I actually have a business together called A&P Consulting, which the A&P is our initials. And what we do is basically help people who want to create change, specifically for marginalized community. We help them get to a space of how to implement that change. So we'll do that through strategic planning or coaching, or just giving them whatever kind of tools that they need to get from idea to implementation. And so Nicole actually does that business full time. I also am an attorney, and so I manage a legal aid office in Battle Creek, Michigan, where we help low-income folks access justice through helping with eviction, foreclosure, domestics, all kinds of things like that. Tiffany, I'm lobbying it to you.
Okay. I'm Tiffany. I'm the second oldest of the girls. I'm a graphic designer. My business is called Above Beyond Designs. And along with my sisters, we do some business together. And we also have a family nonprofit organization called Charlie's Place. Charles is my dad's name. We named it after our father, Charlie's Place. And where we do things in the community, and one of our biggest programs is our youth basketball league, which I am the commissioner, or we say chair over. So that takes up most of our summer. So that's another thing that I do mainly besides my graphic work. And I also do a lot of things in my church as well. So I stay pretty busy. And yeah, Talisha, Nicole.
Hi, I'm Talisha. I'm the third oldest girl, next to the baby. And I am a licensed cosmetologist, and my business is called Talisha House of Styles. And in that business, I do a couple of things. On top of being a full-time licensed cosmetologist, I also teach classes in the community to different youth groups, where I teach the girls how to do hair and how to maintain their hair as they're getting older, and or if they have any interest in becoming a cosmetologist, I help them through that. I also teach biracial and adoptive parents how to take care and maintain their children's hair with that, because a lot of times it comes frustrations, and I try to create a space for them that is loving and very understanding, and knowing that just because their hair is different doesn't mean that you'll know how to do it, when you get done with me. And it'll be something that's easy and just something that's a routine that they do every day with their kids. On top of that, I'm also a seamstress. So right now in the pandemic, one of the things that I've been doing is making masks. Since I'm not able to work, it's been very interesting, needless to say the least, but I'm glad I have that skill that I was able to switch over to do. And then I'm also a devoted mother of a very rambunctious 2-year-old that my sisters tell me constantly that I just had her. And they're her mothers. So yeah, that's me. And then I do work in the community with my sisters, with Sisters in Business. So yeah, I stay pretty busy too. Yes, so I'll wrap it up. I'm Nicole. I'm the youngest of the Parker tribe. They say the best for last. And we already shared with you our business that we have. Of course, I work with a family nonprofit. But a lot of the work with Sisters in Business came out of my thesis work in graduate school. I was really passionate about looking at how Black women in particular were the fastest growing demographic of entrepreneurs, at least supported. And so I had an opportunity to do a lot of great research, really looking at women throughout history and then modern day Black women and how they've been able to be innovative creators. So that work was entitled Ain't I an Innovator? Really paying homage to Sojourner Truth and her Ain't I a Woman work. But it was called Ain't I an Innovator? The Missing Narratives of Black Women in the Field of Social Innovation and Entrepreneurship. In which, like I said, we were able to dig into that research and learn about how women throughout time have been in the forefront creating change and being able to overcome obstacles despite being locked out of critical resources. So upon graduating, I was at George Mason in the DC area. Upon graduating, came home, talked with my sisters and said, there's nothing really here to pull Black women and women of color, period, together in a space where we can talk about our needs as business women, as women in general. And so that's really where this all started. One day I just literally sent them a text and said, hey, what does it look like for us to do a brunch? And they said, let's do it. And we've been off and running since then. Our first brunch had 50 women that came out, and we thought there was going to be maybe 15. But 50 women came out to our first brunch. Our second brunch, we had over 100 women, and we surveyed and we talked to people. And so we just began to continue to pivot as needs came up. So we began to do workshops, and then we noticed folks needing money. So we started to do pitch competitions. And so last year alone, we were able to give away $10,000 to women in the community. And this has really just been off of pure passion and saying, how can we resource you? And from there, we just kind of taken off, and here we are now.
Speaking of change and pivot and COVID-19, talk about, and you could talk about Sisters in Business in your own individual businesses if you feel led. How are you guys changing and pivoting, and what does your business look like after COVID-19?
I'll start. It's very interesting because as a hairdresser, it just stopped. So doing hair in the salon or doing hair at home, going to client's house, it was like you had a flow of income, now you don't. Now what? So I was lucky, and my sister here, she was like, you sew, start making these masks. So I was like, well, how? I'm like, okay, well, people making masks for the nurses and, police officers, and they're giving away. I'm like, well, how am I supposed to make an income out of this or try to figure out how to support me and my daughter? And so after that, me making masks came up, and I just started sewing and just posting like I have masks if you need it. And it kind of took off. A lot of people in the community are doing it, so I'm not the only one. But it's one of them things that it's still not enough people making masks for the demand that's out there. I don't know what my business is going to look like, honestly, afterwards, but it made me look more deeply into it to see And I usually tell most cosmetologists or stylists this that's in the industry, what is another source of income that you have, just in case you get sick or just in case you get injured and you're not able to do your job. So one of the things that I've seen a lot of people do, they started switching over to making wigs, which is one of the things that I've done. I do make wigs. That's something that I've always done, but now it's one of my main priorities, or one of my main another source of income that people, because since I'm not able to physically do their hair, they're still wanting something. So making wigs, also pivoting to see what other things I can do. One of the things that a lot of my customers been asking for is, please, somebody help me. I don't know how to get through my natural hair during this crisis. So doing webinars or Facebook Live, teachings over the internet to show them how to do their hair, what products to get, just talking through it. So I think this pivots the hair industry very much so, because a lot of people were displaced and now it's looking into what are some other ways to create income and still have your business thriving and surviving through this when you're not able to do the one thing that keeps a business, such as being a hairdresser with income.
I can go next. For me, one thing I still have is a part-time job. I work, I'm an essential worker, so I work at Target on the side. And I've been working there since I was 19 years old. And every time I try to quit my job, they just offer me more money, so I just stay. So between that and my graphic design, I have slow days sometimes, and I like to keep a balance. That's the other reason why I haven't let go of that job also, because I kind of need something to do. Sitting in front of that computer screen all day sometimes can dull me sometimes, so I like to balance so I can get out the house, because I'm doing most of my work inside the house. So it's been interesting during this pandemic, and every time I think about my job now at Target, it's very necessary, because this is what people need right now. And unloading trucks and just being out there and seeing what's going on the outside while everybody's still at home. But on the other end of that, with my graphic design, I see a lot of people are starting to gain more business knowledge for themselves. So my work has kind of picked up a bit, because now I'm getting a lot of requests to make logos, because a lot of people are starting to birth new businesses in this pandemic. And also with this being an election year, a lot of people are running for office, and a lot of people have been sitting at home thinking about their next move. So now I'm getting a lot more business for people wanting to start their own business as well during this pandemic, and it's just been that's been very interesting for me, seeing how many people are starting to come into their own, being at home and finding a new, side hustle to do something other than what they were doing with their regular jobs, and finding out that they have more to offer themselves during this pandemic. So that's one thing I can say.
Yeah, and I think for Nicole and I, we've had to look at doing a lot of the workshops that we've done virtually. So our consulting falls into the category of strategic planning, or we'll do some one-on-one thought partnerships. But we've been able to move that from personal in-person spaces to virtual. We also do political consulting. So as Tiffany said, she's getting demands for folks who are now interested. And I think given the times, people are more interested in becoming civically engaged. That's allowed them to, it's allowed me, I should say, to be able to offer my consulting services for the politics and do that virtually. And then thinking through how do you advise and consult people on how to do business differently when everybody's doing different things differently. So it's been a unique experience to sit in the seat of an expert when we're all learning something very new. And so it's been fun just to see how the experiments that we're suggesting people try with their business come together. And then in the legal world, it's really interesting because a lot of our hearings and things are now moving to Zoom. And so I've actually been in a lot of conversations with the court and how do we create more accessibility to folks who may not have the technology. I was joking with one of our judges yesterday actually to say, last year, people weren't even allowed to bring cell phones in the courts in Michigan just because of rules. And now judges have YouTube channels to stream their hearings live. So it's been really interesting to see how quickly things are shifting. But then also just being able to come together with other folks to think through how do we create a new thing so that the folks who've always been on the margins of these systems, how can we now create something new so that everybody really is able to take advantage, whether that's business or legal. So that's really been an interesting transition and pivot for us to be brought in, I guess, as experts on these things when we're all learning things new right now.
Mm-hmm. And I would say also on the consulting and sisters in business advocacy side, we have found ourselves in a very interesting position. And I've been in a lot of meetings with our local government officials, different entrepreneurship support organizations in terms of really how do we find resources for businesses, in particular businesses run by Black women and women of color and people in the community in general. Because as with on a national level, a lot of our businesses have not been able to receive some of the relief funding, and really looking at the structural issues as well as the preparedness issues. And so working with some of the other organizations, like there's an organization here called Black Wall Street, Kalamazoo, and we've worked really closely to say, how do we prepare? How do we get information out? So, and also working on a regional level, like there's some partners in Grand Rapids, as well as another organization in Muskegon that does work specifically with Black entrepreneurs. And so I've had an opportunity to be on calls with them to say, how do we strategize not only on a local level, but on a regional level to make sure our people have access to information and what type of new resources are we going to be creating? So really have found myself in this space of having these really challenging conversations, as well as trying to encourage people to continue to apply for various resources and be innovative and creative and think of other resources to do. Like yesterday, I actually did a webinar on the power of the pivot. How do you pivot right now? So it's really interesting because we ourselves are finding we're looking for new things while encouraging other folks to look for things and advocate within the systems. So that has been a lot of my work and really trying to say, let's push for it. And it's interesting because I feel like this is a catalyst for a lot of the conversations we were having pre-COVID. We have been talking about building a Sisters in Business Fund because we recognize that we need to have access to money and be able to support the businesses that we're working with, as well as be able to continue to support our work on the administrative side. And so this has really been a catalyst to help along a lot of those conversations we were having before, and people are starting to pay more attention to say, okay, how do we make sure resources are getting to where they need to be?
What problem exists in the world today that you would like to solve?
If I had a magic wand, racism and inequity, I mean, I think all of our conversations probably begin and end with something that is as a result of structural racism. And so I think all of our work has in some way really helped to try to dismantle that. I think, even when we don't always intentionally set out to do that specific thing, I just find myself in spaces saying we have to dismantle racism because it all comes back. When we think of it, and sometimes when I speak, I say, the ism that has created all other isms in the U.S. is racism. Like, it begins and ends with racism. And at the point where we decide a group of people is not worthy of humanity because they look different, we've already established ourselves as inequitable. And so a lot of what we do is going into systems and saying we have to fix the inequity. And if we're not willing to do that for the least of these, none of us are going to win.
Anyone else? I'm going to backtrack a little bit. You were talking about funding for African American women and women of color, and just want to give a shout out to Magic Johnson, his life insurance company, funding $100 million in small businesses. So, so that's awesome, and I know his connection to the state of Michigan. So I hope that some small businesses can utilize those funds.
Absolutely.
Tell us what you are most grateful for now in your life.
I would say I'm most grateful for, it may sound cliche, but family. And really because my parents taught us the importance of community, taught us the importance of giving back, and also how to come together and support one another. And I think right now more than ever, not only as family, our own family, but the family of humanity, right? We all need to come together and help each other out through this. And having been taught those lessons from a young age to say, my mother always told us, like, you all have each other. Lisa always tells the story, but we have each other. We are our sister's keeper and our brother's keeper. And for us, that's ingrained. So I'm always grateful to know that I have my sisters that I can go lean on, or my parents, or my brothers, and our extended family that we have through the various community work that we do.
Yeah, definitely the same. I would say the same, family. And I think being able to live with family, but work with family and still like your family. So people always tell us, because we're close. And to us, it's just normal. But it's also funny because just like any family, we have our fights, we have our disagreements. I always say the line, sisterhood is ugly. But it's beautiful because we've learned how to work through things together. We know how it is to literally be mad at each other, but still in the kitchen cleaning up or cooking together, because at the end of the day, just knowing that there are people in the world that no matter where I'm at and what is happening, if I need them, I know that I can be clear in another country, and I think they would swim across the ocean if it literally meant that if something was happening. And just to have every confidence in knowing that there's really nothing so damaging or so hurtful that could separate us. A lot of people just don't have that. And so just extremely blessed in a time like this to just have a dependency on folks who, is just going to be there. And so I think that just being able to have that confidence and knowing that love and support is there so much that you don't have to think about it, helps me to be able to put my focus elsewhere because home is always safe. And so it's important to me that we have that, because the outside world is cruel, but knowing that home is always safe, whether that's going home to my dad's, whether that's my mom's, whether that's my sister's, it's just really, it's everything.
What was that aha moment that you knew your business was going to be successful? And I'm talking about Sisters in Business.
I would say after the first brunch. It was the response we got. I didn't, like we said, we didn't expect the numbers we got. We were really hoping for maybe 15 to 25 people. And like Lisa said, to piggyback off the family thing, we literally fought the night before, trying to get everything rolling and trying to set up and together, to the point where it was like, okay, are we sure you want to do this? And then the next day, it was so overwhelming that it was mind blowing, because just doing that brunch we did it within what? Nicole brought the idea up in October, end of September, beginning of October, and we finally maybe agreed upon it. We gave her a thumbs up maybe in the middle of October, and we started putting things together in November and started selling tickets Black Friday, and the first Saturday of December we had the brunch. And when that first brunch, we working with them 2 months maybe, and then seeing the overwhelm. It was so overwhelming because the need that was there and the response we got and the thank yous and we need this. Thank you for having this. This is something we've been looking for all this time. I'm so glad you ladies put this together. And it was so mind blowing because the night before we were almost at capacity that we had to stop ticket sales because we were nervous that we wasn't going to have enough room. We went from not knowing if enough people were going to show up to not having enough room for everybody to come. And it was just, after that, I knew then that we were on something. And it was there where even being in the room with those women and you find out that everybody, you got maybe 4 or 5 women that have the same business doing the same thing in Kalamazoo, and we're a small city. And for our city to be real small, we do know, we think you seem to know a lot about almost everybody in that city, but to find out as much as we didn't know about a lot of Black women in Kalamazoo or women of color in Kalamazoo that actually have businesses. It was a lot of people that we knew did stuff, we didn't know they did it to that extent. So it was mind blowing, and the help that they needed and the support that they needed, and with this brunch they got it, and them just being grateful for us doing it. That I think that's when I don't know about y'all, but that's when I know.
I agree.
Mm-hmm. What is some advice you wish you had followed?
For me, some advice that I wish I had followed is balance. I think a lot of times, for me and my sisters, we take on so much and we were like, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to help this. And then when I had my daughter, people kept telling me, listen, you're going to have to find a balance because you can't do what you were doing. So once I had her, I really started to realize you have to have balance in your life. Even if you want to do 10,000 things, you have to create boundaries and you have to create balance so that you are able to do those things that you want to do. Because a lot of times, especially for Black women and women of color, we allow circumstances and people and things to break through our boundaries and come over us and knock us off of balance, and then that comes to our detriment, our health, our mental, our physical, and then we end up being sick. We end up being not being able to fully be there in certain spaces, like fully be a mother, or fully be that businesswoman, or fully dedicate to what you need to do at that moment. So as of now, I'm creating those boundaries and balance, and I can tell you that it makes a world of difference. And I'll take that advice, and I'll give that advice to anybody. Balance and boundaries, you have to have them.
And I would also say one of the other things I wish, we always talk about this, is learning how to make our money or knowing our value earlier. I remember when I first started practicing law, I was working with a mentor attorney who told me, get your fee up front. And I knew that I wanted to be the type of lawyer or type of advocate that really focused on helping people and the problem. But now, looking back, I see that there's nothing wrong with being able to gather the resources so that you can do the work. And I think about, how much further ahead would we be if we had a different pool of resources to pull from that we've developed for ourselves. I think we're doing that now, but to know that it's okay to go out, make money, get resources, and not judge people who say, I want to make money. Like, you want to make money because you want to help people. You want to have those resources. And so that's one of those things I wish I would have listened to, but I'm glad that I'm taking heed now.
Uh-huh.
Let's switch gears for a moment. What is the worst moment in business, and what was your takeaway?
I believe my worst moment in business really ties into that last question, was a lack of balance, which was last year. I was taking on several projects. I think for us, A&P had began to grow and scale very quickly, and I was working with a number of different companies in different cities. And I was exhausted and burnt out, and not, like Lisa said, knowing your value. One particular client that I had worked with hadn't paid me. And I was doing the work and pouring into the work, and I really realized that I was out of alignment with the work that I was doing. And I was pulled in several different directions, and I had went into a contract, and I began to do things outside of the scope of work of that contract, and it just began to pull on me mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, and physically draining. And so me not having the boundaries in place to say no, me not having the boundaries in place to make sure, like Lisa said, that I was securing myself and my funding early, me being too concerned with, I'm here to help, I want to help, but not seeing that the environment wasn't conducive to my own growth as a business owner, and as an individual, that and just feeling like I was drugged along for that year because I didn't understand my worth. I didn't understand my value. I had no boundaries. And here I am juggling a lot of work and at my own detriment, and not really being able to say, okay, Nicole, pause. And the crazy part was that year, although once we finished looking at the year, I remember Lisa and I said, well, we made the most money this year, but at what cost, right? And so for me, I would say that was the worst because I was doing things, I was out of alignment with my purpose. I didn't feel like this was the work that was empowering me and feeding me, although I felt like I was doing important work. I didn't know my values. So for me, I think that was the worst, right? Just being spread too thin, not knowing my work, not knowing my values, and continuing to stay on and say yes to things I should have said no to a long time ago.
We can learn from successful entrepreneurs, people, or brands. Tell us a brand or business that is dominating, you admire, and why.
I'll start. One of the people that I kind of admire, and some people will be like, oh, you're part of her beehive, is Beyonce. But one of the reasons why I admire her is because if you follow her career and what she wanted to become, you see her actually transforming into becoming what she actually wanted to do. And right now, she's on that platform of, oh, you're telling me no? That's okay. I can do it myself. And she goes for it. And her work ethic and the things that she does, is just awesome. She knows what she wants, and she is unapologetic for it. And I look at that and I see that and I say, you know what? I want to get to the point where we're able to be like, you know what? This is the work that we're doing for Black women and women of color. And we don't have to explain or be met with, well, what about women in general? Or what about, why can't you guys do this work? And feeling like we have to kind of conform so we can get things or do other things, but saying, no, we're doing this for women of color because that's what we want to do and that's what we're going to do. And actually having our own resources to back ourselves up. And that's one of the things as far as her, Beyonce, that she's done. She's built her brand. She's put in the work. She's invested in herself. She's invested in her community so that now she can be the person to stand on platforms and voice her opinions and voice her concerns and be unapologetic for it and not have to worry that, oh, I'm not going to get this funding, or oh, this is going to be damaging to me, but actually saying, I'll be okay. Like, at the end of the day, this is helping millions of people. At the end of the day, I'm being the voice for these women. I'm being the voice for my culture. And I've done the work so that I can stand on my 2 feet to do this. So, yes, I do. She is one of my people that I do look up to, and I say, you know what? And both of them, Beyonce and Jay-Z, they've actually put that work in and invested back into their community, so now they can stand on these platforms politically and socially and help the people in the culture.
Talk to a younger you. What advice would you give to a younger you?
I would say my advice to a younger me would be go out and travel again. I think about I went straight through school and then went back to school when I finished school. And so I remember having moments in school where I didn't study abroad or I didn't do certain things because it would delay graduation. And thinking I needed to have all of this stuff done in this very tight timeline, and really believing that I needed to have achieved certain things before I turned 30. And so now that I'm well over the 30 hump, it's like there are things I could have done and enjoyed, and it would have been fine. Like this timeline and pressure that we put on ourselves is artificial. That like at 30, you're just getting to a place of figuring out what life actually is, and you actually, for the first time at that point, will know enough about yourself to actually make some real decisions about where you want to go in life. And that nobody knows what they're doing when they're in their 20s. And so I would give myself the permission to explore more of the world at a time where you don't have the responsibilities of life that you do as you get older. That would be my advice.
Who are your top 2 influencers, and what lessons do they teach you?
I think this is, I speak for all of us when I say Oprah is one of my main influencers. Just, can you guys hear influencer? How about now? But yes, Oprah is my influencer just based off of her upbringing and her generosity and how much she gives and the loopholes she has to go through. And just seeing how she still cares for our community. People don't think she does, and people aren't really paying attention. But if you look closely, she's allowed herself to go in certain rooms and connect with certain people that we might not like or agree with. But in return, it's allowed her to have the platform that she has to do for her own people. Like, I was looking this past Saturday how she has this an hour of just Black women. And I think it's called Sister Soul Saturday, where we just come together as Black women, and she got it on her own network. So I would say that's one of mine. And I know this is I know you might not, this is from somebody from the past, but my other person has always been Ray McClung. So that's always been my influencer, just based on the things that she's done from in the education field. And how she looked out for her own as well, and starting the school and just everything she does. Just a very powerful Black woman. So those are my two.
What is the one thing we can do right now to support your businesses?
Right now, okay, sorry.
Go ahead, Felicia.
Okay. I was like, right now, I know for Sisters in Business, one of the biggest things is funding. We want to develop that Sisters in Business Fund so that we are able to give financial resources to the women of color in our community, because a lot of them, even though there's grants and loans that are out there, a lot of them have voiced the concern of, I don't want to get a loan because if I'm struggling, or what if I can't pay it back? And then a lot of them have went out for these grants and had information and the proper things to go for the grants, and they are denied, or they are told, oh, we ran out of resources. And come to find out, with Nicole being in meetings and actually looking at statistics, minority groups and minority businesses aren't getting these grants. We're not getting the grants to support our business. So if we're able to get funding, then we're able to give those resources to help other people in the business so that they can help themselves.
I would say we can go, if you went to our website, Sisters in Business, MI, and the MI is Michigan.com. You could check out more about what we do for Sisters in Business, donate, and support that way. Thinking about like our individual business is AMP has a website, ampcreates.com, ampcreates.com. And check out packages. If you're a person that's looking to do something new, but you just don't know how to get there, you definitely can check out those packages and resources and find a way to help. Tiffany does above and beyond design, and so she has a lot of local resources and connections, and she can give you information on how to get a hold of her. And then I know Felicia shared about how she pivoted in her business, and I think has downplayed, I think, some of the success of her mask business that went from doing like 12 masks for the family to having orders of 50 to 100 masks the following week. And so I would definitely say that Felicia has the styles if you follow her on Instagram. That would be a way to get in contact with her and place your orders for your very nice conventional mask.
You talked about capital. What capital, or how did you raise the capital to start your own businesses?
On faith. To be honest, when we started, I'll start with Sisters in Business, that really came out of faith, and we really looked at saying, how do we just cover our costs off of ticket sales? And then after that, went on to getting some sponsorships, and also we had some generous donations. I mean, for our first pitch competition, we literally didn't even have the money for the pitch until the week of. We had people who donated money and funding who said, hey, I heard your story. And that was literally how we were able to raise money for that. And for AMP, we haven't done any fundraising to raise capital. We've just basically gone out through investing in ourselves. And I would say that's all of us. We've invested in our own businesses. None of us have received any grant funding or taking out any loans. It's really been, and that goes back to also the family aspect, us being able to help and support each other and invest directly into our dreams. And I think just having the community support, the mentors, like for me, when our first biggest contracts came from somebody who had mentored me and showed me the ropes of how this is how you go about going after contracts after consulting. So that's something that we're looking at right now a lot, especially for Sisters in Business, because we want to build that fund and saying, what are various ways that we can diversify our portfolio so we can begin to grab and bring in different resources of funding for Sisters in Business, but then also our own separate businesses right now. Oh, and I will say, we did receive one grant through this, and it actually was through, it's called the Dooney Fund, and I want to make sure I speak about that fund because it was put together by a Black woman. Her name is Catherine Finney. She has her company called the Digital Undivide, and really focusing on Black women in tech. But when this happened, one of the things that she did was she said, I want to create a fund for Black women entrepreneurs so we can invest in them. And she started off with her own money and said, I'm going to start and I'm going to give micro grants to 100 women, and has taken off from there. And now she's had some grant funding that's been matched. But I always try and make sure that I recognize that resource because it shows the power of when we invest in ourselves and are intentional about directing our dollars to our community, we begin to win. So,
if you conducted this interview, what is the one question that you would ask yourself? I want you to ask the question and answer it.
I will ask myself, throughout all that you do as an entrepreneur, how do you take care of yourself? And I would say with me, I have learned to take what I call my mommy breaks and my entrepreneur breaks. And what that is actually doing something that doesn't require work and something that doesn't require me, my everyday life, which means cleaning or going to do bills, because I know as an entrepreneur and a mother, when we get like little breaks, we're like, oh, you're going to watch my daughter for me? That's awesome. Okay, I'm going to go over here and clean the room and deep clean the house and go do this project that I've been trying to do. So I've learned that when those breaks come, to kind of get away mentally. And if it's hard now to get away physically, but, get away mentally and physically and kind of disconnect for a while so that you can reflect and you can kind of, re-energize yourself and come back, because one thing that I've learned is life doesn't stop. It keeps going. And if you take, whether it's 10 minutes a day or an hour a day to yourself and do something, whether it's meditating or listening to that song or sitting on your couch sipping your wine or watching your favorite show or just in the bathtub, just relaxing, or if it's praying, take that time so that you can stay in balance so you're able to come back out and keep doing the work that you do. It makes a big difference. I didn't think it did until I started doing it, and now I don't get, you so snippy or you so irritated. I'm like, oh yeah, today's a good day. Oh yeah, that did happen, but it's okay. You find yourself a little bit more balanced, and you find yourself able to move through life a little bit easier.
Sisters in Business, I want to personally thank you ladies for joining us on Black Entrepreneur Experience. Before we let you go, why don't you share with our audience the best way for them to connect with you and to do business with you? And I know you all have several different businesses, so feel free. You don't have to rush through this. Share all your social media handles and the way that they can reach each and every one of you guys individually and collectively.
So I'll start. So for me, Elisa Parker, A&P Consulting is at ANPCreates.com. We also have a Facebook page, which is also now A&P Consulting. My personal Twitter handle is ParkerSister1, and we also can be found on Instagram and Facebook at Elisa Parker. I'll let Nicole do the wrap up of the Sisters in Business handles because we have a lot there.
You can find me on Instagram at TiffMarie83. Also, you can email me at parkertiffany@hotmail.com. And you can find me on Facebook, Tiffany Parker.
I'm Talisha. You can find me on Facebook at Talisha House of Styles. And the way you spell my name is TELESHA SHIA. So Facebook, Talisha House of Styles. On Instagram, underscore Talisha House of Styles. On my website is www.talishahouseofstyles.com. You can also reach me at my Gmail account at talishahouseofstyles@gmail.com.
All right, and then this is Nicole. You can reach me personally on Facebook. That's Nicole Parker. Put in Kalamazoo because there are a ton of Nicole Parkers on Facebook. I'm also on LinkedIn, and you can also find me on Twitter. My Twitter handler is Nikki Parker. I'm also on Instagram, which is NVM Parker. And also for Sisters in Business, we have a Sisters in Business page, which is Sisters in Business Michigan. If you want to look that up, Sisters in Business MI. Our website is sistersinbusinessmi.com. Then we also have a Sisters in Business Instagram, which is sisters _in_ business _. I think I hit all of them for that. Oh, we also do have a private Facebook group, which is a safe space. So in order to get in that group, you have to be identified as a woman of color. And there are a few questions that you can answer to get into that group. And I believe that is it. And you can reach us also at sistersinbusinessmi@gmail.com as well for email. Yes. And then for our nonprofit, for anybody who may be interested in the work that we do through our youth nonprofit, it is Charlie's Place. That website is KZOO, charliesplace.com, as well as you can find us on Facebook at Charlie's Place. And that email address is info@KZOOCharliesPlace.
Did you have anything? That's a wrap.
Thank you for listening and subscribing to Black Entrepreneur Experience. We would love for you to leave a review and rating on iTunes and share with your friends. For show notes and more episodes, go to www.beepodcast.com. Join us next Wednesday, and remember, green is the new black. So keep your bank accounts and your business in the black.